252. That's the amount of subscribers I need to get to 5,000. Will you help? Today's video is all about my thoughts on the Resident Evil television show on Netflix. I just finished watching the first season with my wife, and I got a lot to say about it. I will be getting into some spoilers later on. I will indicate when those spoilers will be, so don't worry if you haven't yet watched the show and you're coming to a guy who loves video gaming, who loves Resident Evil, to hear if it's a show you, a Resident Evil fan, should be watching. It's the only reason I'm reviewing this. It's obviously a video game channel, but since this is a video game-based television show, it only makes sense to talk about it. Upfront and honest, I'm going to say I actually did enjoy the show quite a bit, which probably comes as a surprise if you've been watching some other people talk about it. Many people have been criticizing this show for a litany of reasons, bashing it, saying it is a teen drama and it has nothing to do with Resident Evil and this is blasphemy and da-da-da-da-da. Remember, we're in the era now where a lot of major television franchises are starting their introduction into the television world. We saw it with Halo, which I did an episode-by-episode review of, which I also enjoyed. We know that The Last of Us is going to be getting a television adaptation at some point in the future. And part of the Bungie deal with Sony included this idea of this transmedia universe, which does indicate to me that we may see some sort of Bungie-based Destiny television show or movie or anime or something in the future. Castlevania as well is another good one, which was actually really good. Resident Evil is fun. It's a quirky idea of a game that gained a lot of traction because a litany of reasons. One, it was kind of the first to do it, but it's gained a very loyal fan base over the years, despite some of the rough patches like Resident Evil 6. The franchise has always found a way to reinvent itself to be a good combination of humor and horror and that kind of jump scare and, what is actually happening, big evil company taking over the world. It's always found a way to balance all of that. That would be incredibly hard to create a shot-for-shot television show of if you think about it in the sense that if you reenacted the first Resident Evil, okay? Obviously, you clean up the cringy dialogue between Barry, the master of lockpicking, and Jill and Chris and Wesker, and you clean that up. But are you honestly going to tell me that that would be a good video game? It was a great video game. Are you telling me that would be a good television show? Because the answer is no, it would not. Could you imagine if characters were not able to open up doors because they didn't have the matching key? Could you imagine how weird it would be if they were scrounging around a person's house finding bullets and herbs that they had to turn into spray? And you would find people locked away in safe rooms, and it doesn't make sense. So to all the people who say this is nothing like the game, good, because that would be even worse. Here it was the idea of an evil company, Umbrella, and watching Umbrella unfold into a disaster, seen from the eyes of people who were very directly impacted. And I liked the idea of this show because it kept flipping between two timelines. The present day, where things have gone absolutely horribly wrong, and the beginning of this all. It's kind of like the day zero and leading up to what happened. And more importantly than kind of how it happened, which we know evil company does bad thing gets out, more bad thing happen, We've seen this, right? What it really focused more on was the relationship between two sisters. And they're so different in present day than they were back in the past. And why? And how did this happen? And that's really, I think, where a lot of this show is based on, is seeing that relationship. What happened to characters? How did people die? Why is this so impactful to a present day character when you're watching flashbacks from the past? And I think maybe because they were new characters And maybe because they were kids, people felt that they couldn't really deliver on the emotional impact of what was going on. I would argue that being kids helped a lot in this show because it allowed us to kind of have that almost Stranger Things sense of awe and wonder and mystery. Yes, there are absolutely moments in this show that you are going to roll your eyes at. Like, how many times can these kids sneak into Umbrella, walking around basically freely through, what should be considered like top secret level research without ever coming across any security? And how can these kids constantly get themselves into trouble and find a way out of things? And these mysteries that surround them in the world and some of the nonsensical things that happen to them, absolutely. But I think it adds to that bizarre, bonkers sense of wonder that Resident Evil provides. Think back to any Resident Evil game and how far-fetched the story was and how unrealistic it would be for some of those events to happen. But in the moment, it felt real. It felt impactful. And I think the characters do a really good job of grounding their emotions based across the things that we are seeing. I liked it for that reason, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So if you're a fan of Resident Evil, give it a shot. Don't let all these internet haters and trolls bombard you because, look, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. But, well, besides me, of course. But nothing is perfect. And this is a somewhat fun nod to the show in its own vein. It doesn't take away from your experience of Resident Evil 1 through 7 plus. You could still enjoy those games as they are. Nothing changes. This is just another take on a very vibrant world, acted out with pretty good special effects, pretty amazing soundtrack, and some characters that you may love, you may hate, but that tell an engrossing story in two timelines simultaneously that always find a way to feed back into each other to understand motivation from past to present or present to past. So that's why I recommend it. With that, I'm going to jump over a little bit to a couple specific things that I would definitely consider spoilery. I would normally put a big banner across the top that says spoilers, but I'm doing this in a single shot on OBS, so you're going to have to use your imaginations. So you've been warned. If you haven't seen it, I'm about to spoil it. A couple of things stood out to me that I enjoyed. One was, of course, the fan service. And there was a lot of zingers in here, a lot of lines that were thrown in here, a lot of action scenes that were thrown in here that were absolutely one-to-one direct nods to the video games. The dog jumping through the window, very reminiscent of Resident Evil 1. We had the master of lockpicking. We had Wesker with the really horrible hairstyle, but the leather jacket Wesker that we know from before. The stop, don't open that door line was in there. There were a lot of really good Easter eggs. Moonlight Sonata. I counted at least a dozen things in there that I was like, oh, this is cool. This is a nod back to the original game or some point in the franchise. So clearly the people who put this show together knew enough to inject some fun fan service. That said, it is kind of far-fetched, as I mentioned before, with these kids constantly sneaking in to this mysterious Umbrella laboratory over and over and over again, seemingly without any concern or any problems in terms of just getting in and doing what they need to do. The Wesker clone thing was bizarre, but a fun twist. And it was interesting to see all the Weskers and to kind of understand what was going on. You know, a lot of these shows always have the exposition episode where the big bad or big bads like to sit down and talk to you in great detail about all of their evil plans. And I have to give Resident Evil a nod here that the Revelation episode moved quickly. There was other things happening. We found out about the clone, and we found out about why Wesker had kids and what was so special about them. Pretty much all at once. I think some of these things, there was definitely some Easter eggs or some, breadcrumbs or whatever that kind of implied what was going on, but they did accurately and very quickly, at least, spell it all out, which was good because they didn't take too long. They moved on. The show kept up with a pretty good pace. I think the fact that we had a lot of present day action, previous day action really helped out quite a bit. There were definitely some roll your eye moments. There are definitely some great mysteries that I would like to see resolved in future seasons. Obviously, the drop of Ada Wong, I think, was a really cool nod. I knew as soon as Wesker handed the paper to his daughter and said, "Go find her," I turned to my wife and I said, "That's either Ada Wong or Jill Valentine." And it was Ada Wong, which is really cool. So hopefully if there is a second season, which I think there is, hopefully these executives don't take some of this negative criticism too hard because, man, video game fans, geez, a very, very unruly bunch. I'd like to see more of this. I'd like to see where the show goes. It was a fun first season, lots of action. The special effects were great. The zombies were great. The twist with the sister being dead but alive and somehow able to, there's a lot of mystery in here that is still to be resolved. And I'm curious to see where it goes. The thing I'll say, though, is the main character, Jade. Wow, they really need to do something different with her looks. She looks just like Michael Jackson from Thriller. I mean, down to the bright red jumpsuit and the Jerry curl right down the center of her forehead. I don't know if that was an ode to Michael Jackson somehow, and it was some weird reference that I missed, but that was definitely, I was waiting for her to like moonwalk or to go hee hee or something constantly in the show because the resemblance is absolutely uncanny. It was interesting to see her try so many times to not be like her father, but ultimately continue to make the same mistakes that he made. It's like that Wesker family is cursed. I'll be curious to see where the next generation takes us. But I ultimately enjoyed the show. I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you have anything fun to say about the show, try to keep it spoiler-free for my friends who haven't yet seen it. And if you haven't seen it, get on Netflix and watch it, and then come back and tell me what you thought about it. That wraps up today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.